we all get a creative mental block sometimes. And when you're in a shoot, that can be a real inconvenience. So today we're going to go through my ways of clearing your head and carrying on creating. Welcome back to another episode of Carry On Creating. My name is Stephanie Thornton. And as I said, today we are going to be having a look at how we get through mental blocks when we are creating. There is nothing worse than being in the studio and having someone there waiting for your direction. You're in charge, all the pressure's on you, everyone's looking at you, and you're just going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do next. I am completely out of ideas. And it's one of the hardest things. Now, as anyone who knows me, or if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I don't prepare for these videos. I don't have notes or anything. It's just boop, whatever comes into my head at that time. And this was something that popped into my head when I had a shoot the other day, and the couple were talking to each other a lot and not really talking to me. And they were talking a different language, so I couldn't join in if I wanted to. So it was a case of I kind of got in my own head very, very quickly. And I did a lot of things. And I then went, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next step is. So what I did was, for me, I've created a formula in my head that I use to keep me going when I have a complete mental block. Now, there's a few things that I do, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain them all on this podcast the best, but one of the first things that I do is I come up with what I call 3 sets of 3. Sounds more complicated than it is. But if I do 3 sets of 3 in every single shoot, I will never not have enough images. It's impossible. So what is 3 sets of 3? 3 sets of 3 is 3 different backgrounds or sets, however you want to call it, and 3 different things within each of those. For example, if you have a white background or a lighter set or whatever it is, you could do some sitting on the floor poses. You could then bring in a chair and incorporate the chair for a couple of shots, and you could then use leaning against the back wall. That would be 3 different things within a set. Now, I'm hoping that you can get more than 1 shot out of each pose. You can do different compositions. You can take this to the extreme and do 3 shots of 3 sets of 3 things. I can't work that out. But you've then done 3 completely different looks within 1 set. You then move on to another set, do the same again, not the same poses, but you do 3 different things. For example, you might have a set with lots of props, so you do something leaning against the props. You do some lovely headshots, and then you do some more dramatic lighting, mix it up a little bit. So 3 things there. You then go on to your final one, and normally your 3rd set of 3 is your creative, your play. You normally do the first one as something safe and your 3rd one as something a bit more fun. So maybe you get gels out, maybe you go to a different location, try some different angles, some different lighting, whatever it is. But you do 3 different things in that. So you've then got 9 completely different sort of posed sets that you can create multiple pictures from each of those, use different compositions and lighting, that you are then totally secure that you have enough to go on. When you get good at your 3 sets of 3, that ends up being the first 20 minutes of your shoot. It's nothing. And I don't mean you're doing the same poses and the same things over and over again. I used to start on a whiter set, a light set as my set 1. Barely any of those images normally made it through, but it was a case of that was my safety set where I did similar poses for people just to kind of get to know them. And then the 2nd and 3rd set I would tailor make to them. But so it would only be a few. There'd probably be no more than 5 or 6 pictures from that set, unless it was a particularly good set and it worked out really well. So that was my formula for me to not worry about what to do and not panic, I suppose, in the middle of a shoot. So after I got my 3 sets of 3, that gave me where I was going. The next thing was what I was going to do, posing. Well, posing is one of the hardest things. I'm sure everyone knows here. It's one of the hardest things to learn, because when you're posing someone, you are completely in control. And it's not just based on you having the ideas, it's based on you being able to communicate those ideas really, really well to your subject. So what I did was each shoot, I would master a new pose, and I would have a set pose that I could adapt for different people. A really good example of one I used to do was I used to get them to pull their shoulder forward ever so slightly, bring the chin down so they were looking down the shoulder. Now, if this was a makeover or a boudoir shoot, this would look more sensual. They'd be looking down the shoulder. It would be looking a little bit more intimate. Whereas if I was then working with a child and they would just be looking down, it would just be getting freckles, lashes, cute little details. If you were working with siblings, for example, suddenly you've got the heads tilted together, they're looking down, you've got another intimate kind of moment, something more probably in black and white that's going to be a bit different. So I would do lots of different variations of one pose, but for different sort of genres. And I would master that. And each shoot, I would add a brand new pose. Now, I might find this on Pinterest. I might see another photographer do something and decide I want to master that. And I'd usually pick something simple. Don't be fooled into thinking that just an over-the-shoulder pose is really easy. If it looks simple, it's probably really hard to make look that effortless. So I would pick from some different photographers that I would look up to at the time. There were photographers like Paul Wilkinson, who I'd look up to for very simplistic but bloody well done posing. I would look into fashion magazines. I would look into Vogue and look for different things there where I would look at the more crazy posing, the more dramatic things. There were some very bonkers Beyonce poses from the, I'm going to say 2010s, I'm not even sure, that I tried to recreate. And you got to have the right people to do that. I would look on Pinterest and look for different photographers from there. I would look at the amazing Lisa Visser for more simple fine art kind of poses. Depending on what subject I had, I would pick something and I just wanted to recreate that. And when I say pose, I also kind of mean the composition, but not stealing. Never was trying to copy a shot exactly, but paying attention to how the composition and the angle worked with that pose, because you might have someone there with the shoulder forwards, but you could crop that 1,000 different ways and get a different shot. So it was a bit of both coming together, and I would keep doing it. And I would pay attention to two things. One, how well did that image sell, or what kind of reaction did it get? As well as how well did I communicate and get the image from that person? Is there anything that could have been done better? Did I miss anything? Was there any hairs or anything off? What can I do to do that the next time? Because practice makes perfect, and I well and truly believe that I had to do things the 10,000 hours, is it? The 10,000 hours to get better, to get good at my job and get good at what I do and what I love. So I put so much energy into learning that new skill, but I would only give myself one thing at a time. As someone who's mentored and taught other photographers, one of the big things that I find is that people give themselves too much and they underestimate how much work it's going to take for them to get good at something. So one thing I always explain is the gap. And you have your knowledge goes up like this side. And if you imagine a chart going along, and this is sort of your knowledge and your skill set. Now, your knowledge will go up like this. Your knowledge will get you can learn loads every single day, but your skill set is going to do more of a gap, just like this, more of a dip. So eventually they're going to come in, but for a period of time, you're going to be in the middle. You're going to be in that gap. And while you're in the gap, it is the most frustrating place to be ever, because you know what you're meant to do right. You know how you're supposed to do it, but your skill level isn't quite there yet. You're still learning the muscle memory, learning how to communicate, learning your lighting. You're still understanding all that. You might know how it's done, but you still can't quite master it. So eventually you come together and your skill and your knowledge meets. And then it starts again entirely. And you do it again, because then you realize everything that you didn't know before. And it will constantly go like this, because if you're always growing and always learning, this should always be the case. You should always be learning and developing and growing as a photographer. There is no point where you reach where you are like, I am done now. I'm a fully cooked photographer and I know exactly what I'm doing all the time. That's never the case. We are probably the most emotional, creative, self-doubt group of individuals ever. We work very alone. It's a lonely career, which is why I've always liked working in a team. And you find that we're all very similar in the end. So I go off on a tangent, of course. This is going to happen every podcast. It's just going to be hours of me just rambling on. For anyone who knows, you know I lose my voice quite often because I talk a lot in shoots. Then I do workshops. And now I sit in a room on my own talking to a camera like this, where I'm going to lose my voice more. So apologies if the voice goes at any time. But looping all the way back to mental block when you're in a shoot, doing the 3 sets of 3 is a good one. Adding on those individual poses each time is something else. And I would say doing something that makes you uncomfortable. And I don't mean try something new. I actually mean change something you're used to. If you always put your key light on the left, you move that to the right. And suddenly all your poses will change and everything will be different because you're reversing what you do. Mixing one thing up will force you to keep being creative. And you need to keep your brain creative, keep your brain doing things, because otherwise you're going to fall into a habit. And as much as we repeat the stuff that works, we don't want our clients to think they get the same poses, the same shots, the same lighting for everyone that comes in, because what's special about that? There's nothing special. You want to be creating specifically for them. You want them to feel that you're creating specifically for them. Just because you can do a lovely shot of someone leaning on a bench doesn't mean they get that every single time. Mix it up, change it, do something different, develop, and just create and play. The last thing that I can think of that I do is actually I've got 2 things really. One is I give myself a moment. I will excuse myself from the shoot and say, oh, just going to go grab a lens from the other room or go grab something. Or I will tell them to take a seat and I'll be moving a light and I'll go up to the back of that light and I'll turn it up, turn it down, do absolutely nothing, because I'm looking at it and thinking, right, okay, quick refresh. And I'm bringing myself out the situation to give myself a little pushback into it. The other one is just be honest and talk with them. If you're new and you're training and you're learning, tell people that. If you're that new and you're that nervous, you shouldn't be working with paid clients anyway. So most people should know that you are training and learning. But if you are working with paid clients and this is your first few sort of paid clients and you're getting into it, then sort of just indicate to them, do you know what? I've got some great ideas. I'm going to try something new. It's going to be new for you, new for me. Let's have a go at this together and bring them on your team. Remember, you're the person in that room that knows more than anyone else. You know what you're doing. You know what this is looking like. You know how the lighting's moving. You take a really bad picture, they have no idea. If you put the light in the wrong place, they still have no idea. They do not know what's happening. You just look at the back of that camera and go in your head, go, oh, that's horrible. But, just go, that's lovely. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change it a little bit, and you're moving around. You do what you can do. So that's my best advice. Let's have a recap, see if I can remember everything I've just rambled on about, shall we? So our 3 sets of 3 is the easy one. I rely on that to this day, 15 plus years doing this, 3 sets of 3. Do you know what? Sometimes I come out and I've done 9 sets. I had a really good shoot. Sometimes I come out and I've done 3 sets, but I did loads within each 3. It's not to be stuck to. The 3 sets of 3 is a security blanket that if you're in a shoot and you're having that panic, did I do enough? If you can know you did 3 sets of 3, you've done enough. You've definitely got enough to give a lot of variety. And of course, that is saying that you're producing a shoot where you are looking to produce a collection for that person. You might be looking at just doing 1 or 2 shots, in which case totally doesn't apply. After that, we were saying about changing it up, mixing the poses in there, and just trying one thing new each time. Don't overwhelm yourself. And then I went off on a complete ramble about taking yourself away, stepping away, coming back into it, being honest and talking to them. So I think there's a lot of things we can do as creatives to keep ourselves inspired. For anything I wouldn't advise would actually probably be create too many mood boards and surround yourself with too much of your favorite photographer's work. You will find that can influence you quite a lot, and you will sort of stint your own growth with you learning to who you are and what you like, because you're too busy trying to create something that other people have already created. So I would definitely say be inspired, but step back and give yourself some time away from all the influences.